welcome to episode 131 of the Balance Period podcast, the show where we share stories of self-observation and actualization with one intention in mind, and that is to empower you to be the best emotionally intelligent example you can be for our next generation. I am one of your hosts, Recovery Ray.
And the Bald Sage.
All right. For today's episode, we have a very special guest with us. She is the CEO of ASM Consulting. She is a small business strategist that serves aspiring entrepreneurs and helps them start, build, and scale their business online. We would love to welcome Amber McIntyre to the show. How are you doing today, Amber?
I am doing well. I cannot complain. Thank you both for having me.
For sure. And just to throw it out there, we are currently working with Amber. So when you notice Balance Period start to grow, you start to see us more places, know that this is why. Okay. All right. So, all right. I would love now, Amber, for you to give a formal introduction for our listeners. So give them a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on the show. Again, as he mentioned, my name is Amber McIntyre, and I am a small business strategist. I am also a mom and a wife. And just a little background, I am still also a corporate, so I'm still a 9-to-5. And I always like to lead with that just because I'm really, really passionate about telling people you just got to start. I'm really, really passionate about being completely transparent with my progression as well. I do a lot. So as far as trying to talk about balance, keeping, my mom role, making sure my kids are the priority and making sure that I'm living within my own happiness. I'm really big with professional development, so I'm always climbing the ranks at work, so being a project manager. But then also recently, so 3 years ago, me and my husband actually started a tree business, which is where this whole entrepreneurial kickoff happens. Our tree business was doing really, really good. We always joke like he's the muscle and I'm the brains. But obviously tree work is not something I'm passionate about. Like it's not something I wanted to do, which is how ASM started. So just a little bit of background.
Perfect. And that was actually a perfect segue because I wanted to talk a little bit more about what inspired you to start this consulting company. What made you say, hey, I want to go out and empower entrepreneurs to start their own business and to scale it and for them to be successful entrepreneurs in whatever space they so choose?
Absolutely. So it's a fully loaded story. So ultimately it was our tree business, but prior to that, I decided to go back to school. So I originally came out of school because I had my daughter, and it was like kind of picking getting a really good job or being able to go to school, not necessarily being able to take care of her the best. So I opted to go to work first, and then I had to go back to school later. But it was like truly in alignment between me and my husband starting our first company, and then me going back to school. I went back for business management. Because again, I wanted to climb the ranks at work, and it just kind of aligned with project management. But I took a marketing class and absolutely fell in love with it. So I shifted my major at school, and then I just learned all of these principles, but they weren't in alignment with our tree business because, book smart versus street smart, there was definitely a gap in between the two. And so I wanted to just bring my own twist. So as far as like the alignment piece, that's how it started. But as far as the battle within myself, I was showing up to my 9-to-5 and I just wasn't happy. I wasn't completely fulfilled within project management. So I work for a clinical trials company, so we do important work. But I still was missing that true passion that what's going to get you up in the morning. I didn't quite have that, and I really wanted that. Like I'm always setting a goal, crossing it off, setting the next goal. But as I kept going up and I reached what I thought would be success, being the senior PM and having all of these different credentials, what society deems as success, I still wasn't happy. And that kind of led to this journey.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I know I experienced something similar along my journey too. So what was it that you began to do in order to begin to discover what it is that you wanted to do, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. So it's really funny, actually. I caught myself doing a lot of complaining prior to deciding to make a shift. I was complaining a lot. I was blaming other people. And I remember me and two other girlfriends, we all worked together at this central laboratory. And we all would just sit there and complain about our positions, complain about not liking the job. And then one day I just got tired of complaining. I finally, I really got into reading a lot. And I realized that regardless of what happens to me or what position I may be in, like I played part in that. And so first it started off with just complaining. Like I knew I had to do something different. I didn't want to just be this unhappy person that's always complaining about the same stuff every time I'm talking to somebody else that's not necessarily in that situation. It's different complaining to the people that actually work there. But I was taking this same cloud and I was attaching it to all my other relationships. Well, what actually helped me was really learning how to monetize my skills and really taking a moment, taking a step back to assess what I'm good at. What do I enjoy? And I think it's something that we don't ask ourselves often, which is kind of crazy if you think about how small it is. Like really taking a step back to say, what do you actually like to do, and not attach any money to it. Don't attach anyone else to it. So even as a mom, I'm constantly putting my kids and my husband first because in a sense, their happiness brings me happiness. But it still wasn't the primary happiness, like my true inner happiness. And so when I started to figure that out, spending time with myself, figuring out what I enjoy, figuring out what brings me peace, how to calm down, how to do transitions, that kind of just led me into business. Like it's what I love.
That's awesome.
When you were going through that process of getting to know yourself, did you start to see then your life kind of switch from being from outside to inside to now more so inside to outside, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. And yes, so one of the other things I try to be very transparent about is like finding yourself and your happiness is not this glorious road. It ends up being, you end up being in this really happy place where I'm not dependent on anybody else's happiness, or I'm not looking for someone else to validate me. Like if someone tells me no, I'm like, thank you for your time, and then I'll go find a yes. But when I first started this journey, it was actually really painful. Like waking up one day realizing like you don't even know who you are. Like you end up having, it's called imposter syndrome, when you start feeling like, who am I? What am I dealing with? Like I don't even know where to begin. So like that journey was very painful for me. However, what I will say is gratitude got me through it. And everything that I felt on the inside, once I went through the discovery, right? Because I was really upset that I went through all this stuff and I didn't even know who I was. But once I got through that process, I hit a moment where how I felt on the inside started to play in my outside. So me validating myself, me loving myself, first of all, taught other people how to love me. Me walking with confidence made other people respect me. And so, yeah, I would say it definitely did.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's really
Thank
cool.
you.
And so you mentioned before that you enjoy reading. You were reading some books. Was there a book in particular that kind of helped spark something in you to say, okay, I'm going to stop complaining and I'm about to start taking action and figure out who it is I want to be and what I want to do with my life?
Man, there's so many. One of them, it's a pretty common one. I would have to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad was definitely beneficial for me. Think and Grow Rich. That was also another one that I actually refer to consistently whenever I'm kind of stuck. And that one is one where I want to say there's like 15 chapters, and each chapter is devoted to one particular thing because you're really trying to learn how to control your positive mindset. And that takes practice. A lot of people think you wake up a positive person, but like it's a commitment. And so I would have to say if I had to pick, those two would definitely be the ones I think left the biggest mark on my journey.
Awesome. Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad was transformational for me too. It took me a while to read it. It was probably like a couple years ago is when I actually read it for the first time. I was like, whoa, why didn't I know this before?
I think it was hyped up and I ignored it for a minute, but it took me a good minute to read it after I bought it too.
Mm-hmm. All right. So in that process, right, you talked about how Think and Grow Rich was tailored around maintaining that positive mindset. Mm-hmm. So how did you go about not only making that commitment, but then developing the positive mindset that you had to have in order to make it to where you are today?
I would say there's 3 principles maybe. I was going to give you one, but then I was like, I can't. I would say one is taking full control of where you are in your life. I think we live in a society where it's easy to blame others. It's easy to say, you kept me down, or it's your fault, I'm not progressing, or my boss is a jerk, or whatever the case may be. But when you really start pointing the finger at yourself first and really getting to the point of there are some things that happen to you that's outside of your control. Absolutely. But how you respond to that makes all of the difference. And so for me, I think one, just truly realizing that, because I read it a couple times and I was still kind of dismissive. Like, yeah, that sounds cute, but whatever. It really took me a minute to grasp that I was truly in control of my life. That was my starting point. After that, I began to give gratitude for all the things we take for granted. So I would even catch myself in the shower like, thank you, God, for hot water. You know what I mean? Like, just thank you for the convenience of being able to go take a shower whenever I want to. So little things like that made a difference, because the things I was complaining about seemed so much smaller. Like, they seem so much smaller that I'm complaining about how to figure out a new funnel for a client, right? But someone else, so there was a quote that I read, and it said, if you have a bank account, if you have more than one pair of shoes, and if you have running hot water, you are richer than 70% of the world's population.
Wow.
That was really impactful for me. Like, it was so impactful that I started researching it even more. And it kind of just stuck with me. So, like, now it's really difficult for me to be bummed out over a bad day. So after I really learned and practiced gratitude, then it became discipline. And I would say discipline above everything else, because you need discipline to keep a positive mindset. You need discipline to constantly be grateful. Discipline has probably been the number one thing that has gotten me through everything, all of my successes, everything I owe it to discipline.
For sure. Those are very valuable points. So we talk a lot about accountability, which is what you were alluding to in that first principle. And then finishing it out with discipline. So another aspect of this show and what we love to focus on is self-care. And of course, it takes discipline in order to consistently prioritize time for self-care. So can you share one of the self-care habits that you practiced over these years that have helped you keep your cup full so you can be the best you for everything that you so choose to spend your time doing?
Absolutely. I will say this is the area I struggle with for the longest time, because I get tunnel vision really bad, to where, like, I don't care. Like, I just need to progress. Like, I'll sleep later. I used to always have this mindset of, taking that time, taking that break away. Like, I almost looked at it in a negative manner. So it did take me a while to realize the importance of self-care, the importance of sleep, the importance of a balance. Those things really took me a very long time. When I realized, believe it or not, I actually went through a moment where I actually had to be admitted into the hospital for 3 days, and it was literally due to exhaustion. They couldn't give me anything. We ended up running test after test, and it was exhaustion, and that's when self-love became mandatory for me. So for me personally, I actually combined it with a check-in for the business as well. So what I'll do is every quarter, I will take 3 to 4 days, and I'll book myself into a hotel. 2 of the days is just purely myself loving me, taking time for me. So I might arrange spas, order my favorite food, get some new books, really being intentional with spending time with me and being intentional of doing all the things that either help me relax or help me feel loved, but giving those things to yourself. I will say too that has made a difference in the relationship I have with my kids and my husband, because I no longer look to them to make me feel appreciated or loved. Like, I'm able to do that for myself now. So now anything that they give me is more of a gift. It's more of a blessing, and I'm more appreciative because there isn't an expectation attached. So I do these little stays, and then the other 2 days, I really try to brainstorm where I want my life to go. What have I done the last 3 months that I didn't really enjoy? What did I wish I had done more in the last 3 months? And honestly, that has been mainly my self-care routine, as far as like on a whole, like consistent, recurringly. on a day-to-day basis, if I'm having a hard day, like I'm a big fan of ice cream. I'm a big fan of just taking a walk, like no phone, no anything, like really going to like scenery just to disconnect and kind of recenter, refocus. So I guess just spending quality time with myself is probably the best way I do self-care.
That's awesome. Mine is
Yeah, and
very
that's
similar to that.
What do you do?
Yep.
So I'm very big on going on walks in nature too. Like I spend a lot of time. If I ever feel overwhelmed, I'm dropping everything and I'm going outside and I'm going on a walk where there's trees or water, or I'll just sit at the water. And I do a lot of meditation, so I'll do it out there. But I'll break away from everything for 2 or 3 hours to come back and do something later.
I'm telling you, me and my mother, we were just having this conversation. When I'm like by water, or if I'm like at any place where I can really see God's creation, I feel the most whole. And I've never been able to really identify why, but that's like literally, I can go from completely upset, irrational, to like just centered and calm if I can get to some type of scenery.
Definitely.
That's really cool. And mine is actually somewhat similar. I use reminders on my phone that go off periodically throughout the day that prompt me to pause and breathe and reconnect to the present moment. So I use mindfulness as my anchor to keeping me at peace and keeping me calm. And so that, regardless of what's happening, because I prioritize that throughout the day, I have moments where I'm always reconnecting and staying grounded and making sure that I'm focusing my energy and attention on what is most beneficial for me in that moment. So,
Do you have an Apple Watch?
I do not.
They have this freaking, and it used to bother me. It really did. I'm trying to learn to appreciate it. They have this notification that pops up on the Apple Watch, and it'll tell you to breathe. So you take 1 minute, and it's like breathe in, breathe out, and it makes me so mad because like I'm very tunnel vision. So I'm like, okay, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I keep telling myself, just try it out for a little bit, and I can't seem to do it. Like, I don't know what it is about, like, if I have to do something in the middle of doing something else, my brain takes too long. So then I just don't worry about it.
I completely relate to that. I used to have an Apple Watch, and I think it was called the Breathe or the Calm app or one of those, and it would go off. And I realized I actually did it. And when you do it, you learn that it's only 7 breaths. And so I really had to ask myself, like, I don't deserve to breathe 7 times. Is everything else around me so important that I can't just breathe 7 times?
Like,
so that was
literally,
one way that I kind of made myself do it. Yeah.
See, now I feel bad because it's literally like 60 seconds, I think. And I still just be like, whatever, like I'll do it later. It's so bad. I'm going to try it though. I'm going to take a little bit of your advice and I'm going to try it, see if it works.
And even if that doesn't end up working, I know one of the things I learned from High Performance Habits. Have you read that book before? Yeah, so he's just talking about priming, like whether it be before you do something or after, just having that time to where you refocus, recenter yourself. I know that was definitely beneficial for me before I started tasks, because my mind, I would like carry things with me from task to task and then be not very productive. So that was something that helped me too, just priming before and after things that I did.
Definitely is great. That one definitely helps me, especially because, so like I mentioned, I'm still in corporate. And so project management can be a handful. But then, so I have clients at work, and then I have clients in my own business, and then obviously being a mom. So I do have like 15 minutes before I shift gears. I just have to take 15 minutes and do something that I actually enjoy. So I'm not really much of a TV watcher. Like, I know it's so weird. Like, I don't really watch TV. And so what I'll do in that 15 minutes is I might make a cup of coffee and go sit on my swing on my porch. Or I'll take 15 minutes and I'll just sit back and kind of read one of the books. So I typically am reading 2 books at a time. I'll read one just for fun, and then I'll read one for development. I like to read the one for fun because it's a great escape for me. There's some type of story in there that you're following or a mystery. And then, so I'll do something like that before shifting to my next responsibility. But even within doing that task, I'll break it down to, like, if it's something that's very tedious. So you mentioned editing earlier before we was recording. I can't stand to edit. It drives me crazy. So I literally have to break it down into like 20 to 30 minute increments. And after I do 30 minutes worth, I can go and do something else because it takes me forever. And I will like procrastinate, or I'll just drag my feet if I'm trying to do it within one sitting. It's not going to work for me. I literally have to chop it up.
Hey, and I think that is definitely something we can highlight. You heard her say it doesn't work for her. This is all about self-awareness. That's the way that you can truly maximize the time that you have while you're here, by being aware of what is true to you, your authentic self, and then creating the system that works based on who you are. So thank you for expressing that, because it's always nice to bring people's attention back to the value of self-awareness.
Absolutely. And I think even because like for me, like, so when I was really having to go through figuring out who I was, my goal used to always be just to be successful. Like, I didn't know what that destination looked like, but I was going to try whatever I needed to in order to become it. But then the more I was striving to be everybody else's version of success, I was losing myself along the way. So when I had to refine myself, I tried everybody else's way and picked up on some things that worked for me and picked up on some things that didn't. But I think through that trial and error is how you truly do learn yourself. You can't take somebody's way and take it as a matter of fact. It's mainly like, does this work for me? And I'm the same way. I live by that. I tell everybody, like, this works for me, but it may not work for you, but please feel free to try it.
For sure. All right, Nick, are there any additional questions that you have for Amber before we go into the last few questions for her?
No, I'm all good.
Perfect. All right, we made it to that part of the show. So you already shared the habit that you practice, so we actually only have 2 more questions for you here before we're done. So the first, what 3 words would you use to describe the relationship you have with yourself, and why would you use those words?
This one is very hard. I just want to let y'all know that this question you are asking is difficult. I would have to say the relationship that I have with myself is evolving. And I would say that it's evolving because when I was younger, I didn't have the best relationship with myself, which caused me to have, so like there was like some trauma that I experienced as a kid, and it made me be very closed off, which is probably where the introvert in me ended up coming from. But where I started then and where I am now is like completely a 360. And so now I think I am addicted to evolution. Like, I am addicted to bringing other people that's going to benefit me, to uplift me. Like, even when it comes to choosing clients, I go through this like screening almost to validate my clients, because I don't even want to work with anybody that is like draining. That does something not only to your business culture, but it also does something to yourself. If you are building a business for yourself, or you're building anything, this could be like a community impact movement, it could be a business, a podcast, whatever you're doing that you are working with other people. If you start letting people into that, it becomes draining. Like, you no longer want to do it. So I would definitely have to say evolving, because every year I'm trying to be better than what I was last year. That is going to be my final answer.
There we go. I'll take it. All right. So, in going to this final question that we have for you, okay, I'm going to set the scene here. Okay. So, you have 1 minute and the whole world is listening. What message would you share with the world?
If I only had 1 minute to share with everybody, it would have to be a 2-fold lesson. 1, it would have to start with you are enough. Just as you are enough, like today, like regardless of the mistakes that you've made or what someone else has done to you, what someone has said about you, like all of that's irrelevant, because we can always choose to be better than what we were or what we did. Like, your mistakes, like none of that stuff defines you. And I think today a lot of people get kind of caught up in the things that was done to them or the things that was said to them. But the 2 things that you are guaranteed, right, is a choice and to be able to make a change. So, like, again, that kind of goes back to that responsibility piece. Like, you can choose to change. So, like, literally, I can wake up and decide just taking 1 day at a time to be better than what I was before. And then next year when you wake up, you know, you're going to see the drastic difference. I read a lot, and in a lot of books, it'll tell you 6 months can make a huge difference in someone's life. So I would have to say you are enough and just start today, one step at a time.
Dope.
Yep. That's what we say it quite often on this show. It's all about getting started and keeping going. That's it. That's all you got to do.
That momentum.
For sure. Exactly. Turning that flywheel. I saw that you had Good to Great behind you.
Yes. That what, that book is something else. I personally like books that don't sugarcoat. It's one thing to be positive, and then there's another to be people pleasing. Just because you're nice and kind does not correlate to positivity. Because a lot of times the people that's being nice to you or just letting you be you and do you, a lot of times that's negative. That's negative energy that's around you. They're not really caring about you progressing. So I think I really like books that get straight to the point. They don't spare your feelings just because it's not nice. So.
Right. All right. Well, that is all we have for you today. I want to give you the space now to share with everyone how they can get in contact with you and how they can support what it is you're working on.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that also. So what I do and honestly, it started off, I think I mentioned this to you, Raymond, where I was very close-minded originally, and it was, I had a specific audience that I wanted to work with. But again, doing the evolving, and the more you learn about yourself, the more that you expand. And when it came to my business, so I actually started off doing a beta test. It was let me make sure I can get the results before I'm out here telling everybody about it. But what I do currently is one-on-one coaching. Now, starting next year, we're actually going to move into a course. So we're going to actually screen our candidates for the one-on-one program a little bit more detailed. But currently, if you go to my website, which is ambermcIntyre.com, or I can give it to you guys. It's just a link. If you would like to share it, you can actually book a straight discovery call with me. And what I typically like to do, one, is to make sure that you are comfortable with me as a strategist, because this is your business. Whatever you're doing, you are the one that's most passionate. But you can reach out, and what I'll do is I'll build out a tailored strategy for you that's going to pretty much reverse engineer your goals. I'm really big with reverse engineering. So I figure out where you want to be, not only goal-wise, but what personal goals you want to be at. Where do you really see your life in a year or so? And then we'll reverse engineer it into a step-by-step strategy. So if you are interested, whether it's profit, nonprofit, whether you are trying to start your business, build your business, or scale your business, you can actually reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to take care of you.
Perfect. And we will be sure to add the links to where you can do all of that in the show notes of the show. So be sure to check that out on this episode if you are interested. Well, thank you once again, Amber, for being here, for sharing your story. She sprinkled so many gems throughout here, so you might have to listen to this episode a few times with a notepad. Make sure that you write these down. All right, Nick, is there anything that you would like to leave everyone with today?
As always, you are already whole, and in every every situation is only a moment, and you have the opportunity to change your perspective on whatever you want it to be in that moment.
Just like when your AirPod piece comes out your ear.
Just like nothing happened.
Just keep moving.
All right. And from me, remember, we are unable to fill anyone else's cup if our cup is empty. So be sure to prioritize time for self-care. Continue to learn, continue to grow, and develop your sustainable self-care system. And lastly, you don't have to be perfect to be great. So be patient with yourself along this journey. Just get started and keep going. So thank you all once again for tuning in to another episode of the Balance Period podcast. We look forward to having you all tune in next week for the next show. Peace.
Later.
Bye.